That's Old Faithful Inn that you're looking at. There's Old Faithful Geyser. And we're in Yellowstone's Upper Geyser Basin. I've just loaded my camera for a moment so I could get on my bicycle. Look at that sign coming up on the right, warning you about buffalo. Even though you're in an area where there are so many people, this is one of the country's top tourist attractions, there's still obviously the possibility of bumping into wildlife. Now there on the right is part of what's known as Geyser Hill, and there are a couple of hikes that you can take up and around Geyser Hill, and you can see those in our YouTube channel, and you can also see them if you go to our site virtualyellowstonetours.com. That's virtualyellowstonetours.com, and there's Geyser Hill. Again, you could see a lot more of it. Coming up on our right, where you see that white area, this is Castle Geyser, and the white is sinter. That is one of the minerals that is brought up from underground when the geysers erupt or when hot springs overflow. Castle Geyser is one of the largest cone geysers anywhere in the world, and I'll try and remember to get back to that and tell you the difference between cone geysers and fountain geysers. At the moment, Castle is erupting about every 10 to 12 hours or so, and its fountain reaches up to about 90 feet, which is about 27 meters, lasts about 20 minutes, and it's then followed by what's called a steam phase. On the right there is a trail that we could take to get to, amongst other things, Grand Geyser. Now I've mentioned, and there is center again, those trees that you see there, we call them bobby socks trees, and gosh, I know there's so many stories that I'm starting and then I'm going to have to come back to. I was telling you that the trail that we saw on the right led to, amongst other things, Grand Geyser. Now there are 5 geysers in Yellowstone's Upper Geyser Basin which have their eruption times predicted. There's Old Faithful, of course, there is Grand Geyser, there is Castle Geyser, and all 3 of those are either behind us or, in Grand Geyser's case, off to the right of us. And ahead of us are the other 2 geysers in the Upper Geyser Basin which have their eruption times predicted. They are Riverside Geyser, which will be off the trail a little to the right, and I'll point it out to you. That there is the Firehole River coming into view. Those of you who've seen several of these virtual Yellowstone tours will know that the Firehole River is a thermal river, and this section of trail that we're doing now is incorporated into several of our other longer videos as well. So please excuse me if you hear the same stories repeated from time to time, because, as I say, some of these sections of videos are used elsewhere as well. When I say that the Firehole River is a thermal river, what I mean is that a lot of the water in the Firehole River comes from thermal features. Now there are 4 sorts of thermal features. There's geysers, which we've all heard of, there's hot springs, which we've heard of, but then there are also mud pots as well as fumaroles. Now we're not going to talk a lot about mud pots or fumaroles. That there's a bridge over the Firehole River which also leads to Grand Geyser and the Grand Geyser area as well as Geyser Hill. We're not going to talk really about mud pots or fumaroles in this video, or that, by the way, coming into view on the right, and I'm sorry my finger is a little in the way, that there is Giant Geyser. Giant Geyser is the one on the right where there is steam coming off. To the left of Giant Geyser is Bijou Geyser. Giant Geyser very seldom erupts, but when it does erupt, it is an extraordinarily powerful geyser, possibly the most powerful geyser in the world. It is so powerful that if you get close up to Giant Geyser, and there is Giant on the right again, you'll see that it actually ripped itself apart in one of its explosions. So what's left of Giant Geyser, which is a cone geyser, and by the way, off on the right is another trail which goes to Grand Geyser, that there is Grotto Geyser. Grotto Geyser is almost always erupting. Its eruptions can last up to over a day. So it's not unusual to come past and see that on the right is Sapphire Geyser. And then also off to the right is Riverside Geyser. Now Riverside Geyser is another one of the big 5 geysers that I mentioned to you, which has its eruption times predicted. Riverside Geyser is one of Yellowstone's most predictable geysers, mainly because there are no other thermal features close to it which may interfere with Riverside's plumbing. And on the right there is the other trail to the small loop to Riverside Geyser, and if we look up the Firehole River, we briefly saw where Riverside Geyser was on the left-hand side of the river. Coming up on our left now is the boardwalk that'll take us to Morning Glory Pool, and on the right is the trailhead for Artemisia Geyser. That is a trail that's also featured on many of our other Yellowstone shorter hikes. Well, let me put my bicycle down and we can take the trail up towards Morning Glory. Morning Glory is really one of Yellowstone's iconic sites. It's just so incredibly colorful, isn't it? Unfortunately, the reason that Morning Glory Pool is so brilliantly colorful is because it is dying. Morning Glory Pool relies on a source of heat coming up from underground, and as the heat has lessened over the years, so more and more organisms are able to survive in Morning Glory Pool. Normally, when you see a hot spring that is really healthy, it'll be very blue or even a grey color, and you'll only see the colors right on the very edges. This is because there are very few what's called thermophiles or heat-loving organisms which are able to survive in these hot springs. But as the temperatures of the hot springs get lower, so more and more organisms, more and more thermophiles are able to survive within the hot springs such as Morning Glory. Over the years, Morning Glory's temperature has decreased as a result of both earthquakes shifting the underground plumbing, as well as people throwing things into Morning Glory Pool, which you really shouldn't be doing. What happens is when you throw something in, even if it's something really, really small, the sinter that I mentioned to you, that white stuff that you can see on the edges of the pool, the sinter adheres to the things that get thrown in, and in no time what has been thrown in becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and it eventually clogs up the plumbing from underground, and this stops both the heat and the water coming up from underground. We'll leave the boardwalk at Morning Glory behind, and we'll start making our way down the Artemisia Trail. It's always been a bit of a mystery to me why more people don't take the Artemisia Trail. Its trailhead is in such a prominent position right next to Morning Glory Pool, and it comes out the other side on the Grand Loop Road. On our left here now is a side view of Morning Glory. One of the beauties of the Artemisia Trail, as well as various of the other trails around the Upper Geyser Basin, is that in just minutes, literally minutes, you can be away from the hustle and bustle of the crowds at Old Faithful and the Upper Geyser Basin, enjoying the peace and tranquility of the forest. Look how beautiful that blue-grey hot spring is. Remember, if you're going to be on one of these more remote trails, even though you're so close to a well-known area, make sure that you take your bear spray with you. You never know when you may come across a bear. It looks like there's some thermal features right next to the river, so we're going to go take a look. That's Amber ahead of me. She's one of our West Yellowstone team. And just as we come down to the river, the sun comes out. The steam that I saw was coming out from this pool over here. There's also that across the river. This is just such a beautiful sight anyway. And there's a buffalo there, grazing away peacefully by itself. This is Artemisia Geyser, as you probably saw from that sign. This is the first time I've ever seen it. And there is the Grand Loop Road. We parked our car at the Daisy Geyser Trailhead, which is off in that direction over there, so we have a short walk.
Out of shape and being able to enjoy it. It's like, I don't know, it's interesting.
We're going to be at the Grand Loop Road pretty soon, and there will be two ways that we can continue this hike onto Mystic Falls. The one way is to go through Biscuit Basin, and you'll see the driveway coming out of the Biscuit Basin parking lot in a moment. There it is, where you see that minivan over there, and we could go left following the way that the minivan is going, and that'll take us to another entrance to the Mystic Falls part of this hike. And that entrance, it's just where you see those cars parked off in the distance there. That will get us into the backcountry a lot sooner, and that's what we're going to be doing today. My old friend Trixie, also known as Cammy, is with me today. And there's two ways that you could start this hike. You can either start over here, and we'll see it says that Mystic Falls is 1.4 miles down this loop over there. There's Biscuit Basin. So you can start over here, and this will take us to the back end of Biscuit Basin itself. So, which also means that you could start the hike in Biscuit Basin itself, walk past Sapphire Pool to the, I guess it would be the east end, and then make a small turn, and from there you would take the trail to Mystic Falls. Now, remember, bear spray. We're headed into the backcountry. We're taking our bear spray. Trixie, do you have your bear spray?
Got it.
Outstanding. And while this is a personal choice, I generally take the safety off. That way, if we do come across a bear and need to use the spray in a hurry, it's a lot easier to get the bear spray going. You don't have to worry when you may be panicked about getting the safety off. Now, those of you who've seen quite a few of these videos may recognize this. This was done separately as a freestanding video to show you another way to get into Biscuit Basin, and you can see that in our Virtual Yellowstone Tours channel if you go to virtualyellowstonetours.com. That's virtualyellowstonetours.com. Excuse me, you can see it in our YouTube channel. Now, I'd mentioned before that today is actually supposed to be a bluebird sky day. And the reason that there's all this haze around is because of a big fire that's burning not too far away from Old Faithful. It's been given the name the Lone Star Fire, called that because it's burning pretty close to the Lone Star Geyser, and all this haze is really smoke that's coming off the fire, and it's been around for a couple of weeks. It should be a beautiful time of the year to be out. It's the beginning of September, it's the fall. The temperature is just great for taking a short trip into the close by backcountry. And it's a shame that there's all this smoke around. What we're on is actually the Continental Divide Trail. It's obviously a very small section of it. And where I previously showed you the sign saying Daisy Geyser, that was that's also part of the Continental Divide Trail. The Divide Trail is a hiking trail that runs all the way from the Mexican border in the south up to the Canadian border in the north. So it traverses from south to north or north to south an enormous section of the United States. And you have some people trying to do it in one season, and others do it over the course of several years. These are what we call bobby socked trees. I suppose you'd have to be pretty old to remember the bobby socks fashion, but it refers to the white socks that used to be worn, and you can see at the bottom of these trees that they're white, and what's made them go white, and remember those orange markers, I'll get back to them, and what makes them go white is the sinter in the area. This is all sinter over here, and sinter is one of the minerals that gets brought up from underground by water erupting from geysers or coming up from hot springs. I mentioned that remember the little orange markers. We can see one on this tree coming up ahead of us, and this will be an area where in the winters, if you're staying at Old Faithful, you can come cross-country skiing, and the orange shows you where the trail is, because there's just so much snow here. In the winter it's impossible to see where the trail is the way that we can in the summers. There's another one up there. It may be useful to take a look at a map of the area to see where we are. If you go to one of our sites, westyellowstonelodge.com/map, that's westyellowstonelodge.com/map, and I'll drop in a section over here. You can see just where Biscuit Basin is and where this trail is. We're very close to Old Faithful. That Daisy Geyser Trail that I showed you at the start of this video will lead us into the Upper Geyser Basin itself. Almost half of the world's thermal features are located right here at Yellowstone, in the Upper Geyser Basin. Has about 150 geysers in a space of just 1 square mile. So we're very close to the Upper Geyser Basin, basically in between where you see Biscuit Basin on the map and Old Faithful in the Upper Geyser Basin. Is Trixie still with us, do you suppose? I was telling you about this Continental Divide Trail, how some people will try and do it in one season and others will do it over the space of a couple of years. You try and come through this area, which is one of the higher areas of the trail, somewhere around the end of June into July, beginning of August, so you don't have to deal with trudging through the deep snow. I've mentioned in other videos that our company operates Yellowstone Taxi, and we'll get people calling us from the Divide Trail, where it comes out about 10 miles to the west of the town of West Yellowstone. Oh, what is that, a bluebird? A mountain? No. That lovely blue tail though. The Continental Divide Trail comes out about or crosses US Highway 20 about 10 miles to the west of the town of West Yellowstone, and we'll get people coming out on the trail who will give our taxi company a call wanting to come into West Yellowstone and spend some time in a motel or an Airbnb, get a decent meal, and they will have sent supplies ahead to the post office very often, and they'll pop in and pick them up. So this is Biscuit Basin over here, and we can see some people who've got a backpack, at least one of them, several backpacks, and it looks like they've decided to access the trail from Biscuit Basin as opposed to the more sort of backcountry route that we took. There's some beautiful dead trees around, aren't there? And I think I'm going to stop here and wait a moment for Trixie. And Trixie has joined us, and we can continue along the hike. The Park Service is really good about putting up these boards. And having said that, is there anything left on this one? Yeah, I guess there is. Morning.
Morning.
Hi there. And after just a couple of minutes of walking, we're in the backcountry. And up ahead of us is where the trail splits up into a big loop. If we go to the right over here, it's a steeper way to get to an overlook. If we go to the left, we'll head down to Mystic Falls, and then we can continue up. I suggest you do this in a clockwise direction, as it's a little easier to walk up the elevation that you're going to be coming to. And I'm going to stop here and wait for Trixie anyway. How you doing?
Well, how you doing?
Well, that Summit Lake Trail takes you quite some distance, and it'll eventually bring you to the Yellowstone boundary, where it basically crosses, well, you're already in Idaho, but once you leave Yellowstone, you'll be in the state of Idaho proper. Sounds like we're meeting up with the little Firehole River, and Mystic Falls flows over, well, the little Firehole River flows over Mystic Falls. And this is going to be alongside us for a while. The little Firehole meets up with the Firehole River itself just before you get to Biscuit Basin, which I've mentioned to you a couple of times. And it's time for another Trixie break. Boy, it's a shame it's so hazy and so smoky, isn't it? It should be a beautiful blue sky today. We'd had blue skies forecast all week. And the day I decide to come out and do this video, the wind changes and the smoke from the Lone Star fire heads off in our direction. This is pretty though, isn't it? Even with all the smoke right next to the little fire hole. And this is a hiker-made trail as opposed to a park set-up trail, just down to the river. And with Trixie being a little bit behind me, I think I'm going to come down and take a look. Boy, the smoke is getting really thick now. apart from being able to see it, you can really smell it. This is what I meant when we were at that point where we could have gone one way or the other on this big loop. Namely that the incline is less here, it's a bit steeper the other way. Although obviously you cover the same elevation. Can you see where that guy is in red up at the top there? And you can start to see the falls coming into view. There they are over there. With me, I'm just dropping it so I can take a picture or two, and continuing on the trail to get a bit closer to Mystic Falls, and then depending on how Trixie is feeling we'll probably take the loop which you can see up there back to the overlook of Biscuit Basin and go back that way. Starts to get a little bit rougher over here. Nothing really significant though. Hi, no problem. That's where the trail continues. This is another one of those hiker-made trails that you can just detour to get a bit closer, but do be careful if you do this. It's pretty darn loose. Yeah, it'd be easy to fall. Thank you, appreciate that. That's about a 70-foot drop. You can see that the falls are really more of a cascade than a fall as a true waterfall, as it comes over multiple levels. So I'm now continuing the loop, which will take us to the overlook of Biscuit Basin. As you can see, there's a bit of a climb ahead of us. Really climbing into the smoke now, aren't we? Hi there.
Hello.
Thank you. And we've really climbed up a bit, haven't we? Passing by, guys.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you. Can you see the Grand Loop Road in the distance there through all the smoke? See some cars driving. Such a shame it's not clear day today. And this goes down to an overlook of the falls. That's the main trail over there. Once again, really, really slippery. And now we're at the top of Mystic Falls. This over here is actually a thermal feature. Notice that yellowish color. That in all likelihood is going to be sulfur. And it's really slippery. So this is as far down as I'm going to be going. A little difficult to see, but we can see the Grand Loop Road there. I can see cars driving along off in the distance, but really difficult to see through the smoke though. And now here's the fun part, going back up. You can see where we were down at the bottom there. You can see people coming up the trail to see Mystic Falls for the first time. Well, you're not going to be doing too much cross-country skiing up here, are you? Hi there.
Things are going in the summer. Things are starting in December. I just did not understand.
I think we saw those people at Biscuit Basin while I was waiting for Trixie to catch up. Do you guys need some water? I've got an unopened bottle.
Oh, we're doing just fine, thanks. We got plenty.
Okay.
Past us, and then where'd you go? In the woods?
Oh, there was a beautiful
Oh,
overlook of the falls.
Okay.
A little slippery though.
Yeah, you're brave.
Be careful.
See you guys. There's some wonderful snags here, aren't there? Unlike the monument Geyser Basin hike, you can actually see where the top is. And if there weren't all that smoke, you could see the Grand Loop Road from here as well. And thermal features up on the hill. Actually a geyser erupting over there. Over there, how about that? And that's clearly part of the Upper Geyser Basin. And it's time to stop and get some water. Okay. There is a trail at Biscuit Basin. Just lowering my unipod again. Hope I can pick that up for you. A little difficult to see through the smoke, but that looks like the boardwalk over there. And behind it you can see the Grand Loop Road. Backing up the monopod again. Time for another sip of water on the go this time. That noise that you've heard is the water sloping around in my bottles. Gosh, that tastes good. I'm sure you guys probably know this already, but try freezing your water bottle before you leave the night before. And by about this time on the trail, it started to defrost. De-ice.
You haven't seen the falls yet. Yeah, we're going to do a U-turn and head up.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we just decided to have our sandwich.
And here is the really great overlook of Biscuit Basin, which you can see over there. So Faithful is up there somewhere. And you can see the sun reflecting on the Firehole River. And then the Midway Geyser Basin. So, hey, how you doing?
Excuse me, you know where to see the bears?
Huh, do you have your bear spray with you?
Oh gosh.
You really need to carry bear spray if you're coming into this sort of country, because you never know when you may see one. Bye.
Is it all lowercase letters?
Yeah. Bye-bye. You guys doing okay?
Yeah.
Good.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing? It's a lot easier our way. There's the Grand Loop Road again. Looking at this trail compared to the other one on the way up, this is why I prefer to go down here and up from Mystic Falls. In other words, do the loop in a clockwise direction. Yep. That's where we were at the very top. Thank you, ma'am.
Right behind you.
Thank you.
the view good?
Yeah, it's stunning. You guys recognize where we are now?
Oh,
This is where we first stopped and chatted.
okay. It's good to see you because we did it the wrong way.
Yeah. No, it's all good. That's the way back then.
You want to take a picture?
Sure. Those poor people got lost at the top. I told them where to go and how to do the loop, and so they climbed all the way up to the top. And then got a little lost and stuck close to me on the way down. So this is where the loop started. We went down there. You could go in that direction as well. We're now going to retrace our steps back towards Biscuit Basin. And when we get to Biscuit Basin, though, instead of heading out the way we came in, through the backcountry, we're going to go out through Biscuit Basin itself. If you look in the background, you can see some people walking, and they are just coming off the same trail that we've just done, the Mystic Falls and Biscuit Basin Overlook Trail. I'd mentioned previously that we did shoot parts of this video in different segments, and looking at the beautiful sun and the lovely blue skies, it's clear that this is one of the videos that we shot on another day. I'd mentioned earlier that there are two ways that the Mystic Falls and Biscuit Basin Overlook Trail can be accessed. The one is the way that we went in and started the trail, basically in the backcountry, if you like, opposite Daisy Geyser off the Grand Loop Road, and the other way is to come through Biscuit Basin itself, which is where we are at the moment. The advantage of coming in, and for that matter going out through Biscuit Basin, is that people who don't have a lot of time in Yellowstone and who might otherwise have missed touring Biscuit Basin will be able to do so. Biscuit Basin is not one of the big three geyser basins, the Upper Geyser Basin, the Midway Geyser Basin, and the Lower Geyser Basin, but it is nevertheless, as you'll see, a really stunning geyser basin, and it can be fun to both start and end your trip through Biscuit Basin. You know, I mentioned to you that you need to stay off the boardwalk, stay on the boardwalks, but then we noticed that buffalo pretty much go wherever they like. Buffalo come here in the winters They come to this and various other thermal areas. There's another little geyser going off.
We probably didn't appreciate it as much. Maybe that, but we really did.
Buffalo come to these various thermal areas because it's a lot warmer here and the snow doesn't last as long. Obviously the heat melts the snow. But an unfortunate side effect of that is that there is a mineral, there is an element in these thermal areas that cause buffalo's teeth to erode. So they'll come here and they'll eat the grass and whatnot in this area, and their teeth start rotting away. So they are able to get some food in the winter, they stay a little bit warmer, but in time they actually starve to death. Once their teeth start rotting and falling out and dropping away, they can't eat anymore. Once they can't eat, they're obviously going to starve to death. We get a better view now of where we are. I mentioned the Artemisia Geyser Trail. That's the trailhead where you see that white area. I've mentioned in several of these videos that where you see this pale or white area, this is sinter that the geysers bring up with the water when they erupt. So whenever you see a white or a paler area, it either was a thermal area, or as is the case now, still is a thermal area. So where you see that pale area across the road, that's the Artemisia Geyser Trailhead. And I mentioned at the start of this video that it comes out right next to Morning Glory. So it brings you out right at the very bottom of the, or at the very end if you like, of the Upper Geyser Basin. And it really is a glorious trail. This of course is Sapphire Pool again. It really is a glorious trail. Be sure that you take bear spray with you, as always, even though you're so close to a major road and so close to a major area with the Old Faithful buildings being up in that direction over there. But you never know when you may come across a bear. You may like to take a look at that virtual Yellowstone tour that we have, where I was out mountain biking actually outside the park and came across a little bear. Fortunately it was a little bear, probably about a year and a half old, and didn't have its mum with it. I'll get back to that. Here we can see these bacteria mats again. The Artemisia Geyser Trailhead then goes past Artemisia Geyser, as the name obviously suggests, and that is a wonderful fountain geyser. There's, broadly speaking, two different sorts of geysers. Fountain geysers, which are wide and open, and the water when it comes out doesn't have much direction, and cone geysers, like an upside down ice cream cone, and that is what gives Old Faithful, for example, and Castle and White Dome their direction. Sorry about the wind noise, it actually got a lot worse, so I deleted the soundtrack, or this part of it, and I'm doing the narration from my computer. Coming up, our Black Diamond Pool firstly, and just after that in the background you can see Black Opal Pool. Well, we're coming to the end of the Biscuit Basin part of this hike, and if we look to the right, that is where we would access the next part of the hike, which is the Daisy Geyser Trail. That takes us to Daisy Geyser, as the name suggests, as well as the Daisy group of geysers. It's just a short walk down the Grand Loop Road to our right. You will recall where we first started the Mystic Falls and Biscuit Basin Overlook Trail, in that direction over there where you see those green trees to the right. And across the road from that, just opposite that, is the Daisy Geyser Trailhead. So we'll be walking up the road perhaps for 5 or 6 minutes, and then we'll start the next part of this hike. And if you do come this way and take this little walk, I do suggest that you bring your bear spray with you. I always take the safety off, just in case, because if we do come across a bear all of a sudden, you don't want to be messing around trying to remove the safety, so you can use the bear spray. That's the Firehole River straight ahead of us. You can see thermal features on both sides. Those of you who've seen others of these videos will know that there hasn't been a bear attack on a group of 6 or more people in the Yellowstone area. But the fewer the people, the greater the chance there is of a bear attack. And today, it's just me and Amber, one of our team at our West Yellowstone office. As you can see from this trail, the vast majority of people who visit the Upper Geyser Basin go and park their cars in the parking lots around Old Faithful Inn and the Visitor Center and Old Faithful Lodge, and then walk to the geysers from that side. I wanted to show you what it was like doing it in a slightly different way. We can see thermal features once again right next to the river. I mentioned before you could probably do a whole book of photos on dead trees in Yellowstone. There's some really stunning shapes. Once again, those of you who watch a few of these videos will know that the Firehole River is a thermal river, and what that means is there's water flowing from the thermal features into the river from the geysers and the hot springs. Look at this little pool. It's one of the beauties of taking this trail. You don't want to get too close to any of these pools or any of the thermal features, because you could go straight through the ground. So look at those bubbles coming up. Bear experts say that when you're in areas like these, you really should make a lot of noise so you don't surprise a bear. Notice the markings on the trees. This will be a cross-country ski trail in the winter, and so you can see where the trail goes. We can see markings on that tree ahead of us as well. Notice the snags up there. Snag once again is a standing dead tree. It looks like there was some buffalo here. And we're back alongside the Firehole River. Quite a few more snags in this area, aren't there? If memory serves me correctly, I think that's Black Sand Pool over there. Now I know that Black Sand Basin is all the way back over there, but still, I believe that's the name of that pool. even though this is the 3rd of July, you can still have Yellowstone to yourself if you know where to go. We haven't seen one other person out. And we can see steam again over there and straight ahead of us. So we're clearly approaching the thermal areas, and what's called the Daisy group is off in that direction. By the Daisy group I mean that there's a number of thermal features there, and they take their name after the main geyser in the area. You've got Daisy Geyser, Splendid Geyser, Brilliant Pool, and I think the other one was Crescent. It looks like there's people there waiting for Daisy. Too bad we just can't cut across the meadow, isn't it? But you generally don't want to walk anywhere where there's not a boardwalk near a thermal feature. Oh, and here's our first person. We've just watched Daisy Geyser erupt, and we're going to head back towards the main trail that runs between Morning Glory and Old Faithful. When we came in on this mission to photograph this to photograph this geyser, we came in on this trail. We hiked up from the Grand Loop Road. And while we're up here, we're going to be heading off to check out the main system. Old Faithful Inn off in the background over there. That trail in the background between Morning Glory to our left and Old Faithful to the right is one of the few in the park where you're allowed to ride a bicycle. So I will be on a bicycle for the rest of this trip. In the background as well, on the right hand side slightly, you can see Giant Geyser and Bijou Geyser. This over here is where we've just come out. It's one of the two entrances to the Daisy group of geysers. And then to the left, as I mentioned before, that is Giant Geyser with a little bit of steam coming out of it. Next to it is Bijou Geyser. Giant Geyser doesn't erupt very often, but when it does, it's an extraordinarily powerful eruption. In fact, that's the reason why, if you have a look at another one of our videos in our YouTube channel, and by the way, on the right, that's the other entrance to the Daisy group of geysers. I was mentioning Giant Geyser, though. If you have a look in one of our other videos, in fact several of our other videos in our YouTube channel, you'll notice that Giant Geyser, as it is today, is really only a portion of a geyser. Its eruptions, and that bridge over there is over the Firehole River. Giant Geyser's eruptions are so extraordinarily powerful that Giant actually blew itself up in one of its eruptions, and you'll notice that it is no longer a complete geyser. We're on the trail now, as I touched on before, between Morning Glory Pool, which is behind me, and Old Faithful, which is up ahead of us on this trail. The trail is a very pleasant trail. As you can see, it is paved, and it follows the Firehole River for almost the entire way. The Firehole River, as those of you who've seen several of these virtual Yellowstone tours will know, is a thermal river, and what that means is a lot of the water in the Firehole River comes from the thermal features in the Upper Geyser Basin, and this of course is where we are at the moment, in the Upper Geyser Basin. What happens is when geysers erupt or when hot springs overflow, the excess water will flow into the Firehole River. So you have the water from these thermal features flowing into the Firehole River, and hence the Firehole River becomes a thermal river. This is a great trail to take. Several of what I like to regard as the major geysers in Yellowstone, the big 5 geysers as I like to call them, of the Upper Geyser Basin, are either on this trail or not too far from it. In fact, if you look at those snags off on the left-hand side, those white trees that are basically no longer trees, a snag in the Yellowstone context is a standing dead tree. And where I pointed out those snags to you, that is where Grand Geyser is, which is one of what I call Yellowstone's big 5 geysers. There's only 5 geysers in the Upper Geyser Basin which have their eruption times predicted. That, by the way, ahead of us a little to the left is Castle Geyser, which is another one of the 5 geysers in the Upper Geyser Basin which have their eruption times predicted. The 5 that do have their eruption times predicted are Castle, which we're staring at, and then if we take the trail to our left, amongst other places, it'll take us to Grand Geyser, which is another one of the 5 geysers in the Upper Geyser Basin which do have their eruption times predicted. Behind us is Riverside Geyser. Then there is Daisy, which we saw a moment ago. And then there's also Old Faithful, which is straight ahead of us. So to recap, you've got Old Faithful Geyser, you've got Grand Geyser, you've got Castle Geyser, you've got Riverside Geyser, and you've got Daisy Geyser, which are the 5 which have their eruption times predicted. Now there is a 6th geyser that has its eruption times predicted on a more or less regular basis, and that is Great Fountain Geyser. But Great Fountain Geyser is not in the Upper Geyser Basin. Great Fountain Geyser is on Firehole Lake Drive, and as the name states, it is a fountain geyser. We'll see on this trip that there are 2 different sorts of geysers. You get fountain geysers and you get cone geysers. Old Faithful is the world's best example of a cone geyser. What happens is that the waters that come up from underground bring certain minerals with them, and one of the minerals is sinter, and off on our right there was the gas station and a convenience store, as well as a general store. That also on the right, that briefly came into view as Old Faithful Inn, which is one of the great historic buildings in the entire national park system. At the time that I filmed this, it was 2020, during the coronavirus outbreak, and that's why there's no flags flying on the top of Old Faithful Inn as there normally are. But I was telling you about Old Faithful being a cone geyser, and the sinter that gets brought up from underground forms, or basically accumulates, and eventually forms something like a shape of an upside down ice cream cone, hence the name cone geyser. Now, a fountain geyser, on the other hand, like Great Fountain, which I was talking about a short while ago, that does not have a cone. There's no sinter that has built up a cone around it, although there is sinter in the general area all around it. So it's a fountain geyser. It doesn't have the same direction that a cone does, and so you don't have the cone giving the geyser direction. That is Old Faithful ahead of us on the left, and we can see people starting to congregate for the Old Faithful eruption. And I'm afraid I've reached the end of another one of our virtual Yellowstone tours. Thank you so much for joining me on this Yellowstone tour. If you enjoy our virtual Yellowstone tour series, please consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Thank you, and see you in Yellowstone.